Right, before you go all caps blazing into the comment section, be aware this is not simply about rematches or knee-jerk takes, nor a lack of faith that a good to great wrestling show can't be comfortably rectified within a few weeks of stumbling into a slump. But it does feel that is where we are at with AEW at the present. In some areas, don't get me wrong, AEW are doing a magnificent job. In others, though, I'm Adam Wilborn from What Culture, and these are 10 storylines AEW should abandon right now. Number 10, Dante Martin +1 versus Team Taz. On the 12th of January 2022 edition of AEW Dynamite, Dante Martin and Powerhouse Hobbs wrestled a decent version of the exact type of match men of their size and skill sets should be having, as they did on September 8th, 2021, when Martin's hostilities with Team Taz were actually heating up rather than dragging on a bit. Both were good television back and forth, but the key difference between them was the amount of engagement anybody could reasonably apply when watching. The rematch felt apropos of almost nothing thanks to threads that are starting to feel dropped rather than loose between Martin and the group he weirdly briefly joined. And yet, this has to be the only story of note because there's this internal insistence that somebody sidle up next to the youngster at all times in order to help him win this 100 years war. AEW loyally holds on to many programs that it shouldn't, and this is another that would benefit from a binning. Number 9, the House of Black versus the Varsity Blondes. Brody King's debut on the January 12th edition of Dynamite was electrifying, if entirely disjointed in its presentation. King arrived to save heel associate Malachi Black from a 3-on-1 assault from the Varsity Blondes and Penta. Black had, in defense of the bullying babyfaces, brought all of this on himself, but it was still quite an odd look seeing him rounded on by the supposed heroes before his monstrous new partner made the save. With the Kings of the Black Throne now fully established, Black's rivalry with Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison should end immediately. For the House of Black's gimmick to get the best possible start, they need to crush the Blondes now, rather than interrupt each other's interviews for the next 6 bloody weeks. Number 8, the Elite versus Best Friends. It's not enough that this program was restarted by a Dynamite segment that looked as though it belonged on Monday Night Raw. It's the fact that it kicked back off at all. Adam Cole defeated Orange Cassidy. Best Friends aren't on the Young Bucks level, and no attempt to address that will change the perception at this point. The whole issue just feels totally exhausted, especially in comparison to the intriguing civil war for Cole's heart taking place between the Bucks and new arrivals Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. All of this describes the polar opposites of AEW's original modus operandi. This talk of repetition, of tired tropes and played out programs, these are the weekly foibles of a WWE focused on churn first and entertainment second. Regardless of the toxic connotations attached with making it, there can literally be no worse comparison. Number 7, Britt Baker versus KRIS Statlander. Let's be honest, Britt Baker isn't short of opponents in a women's division the company has worked diligently to improve over the past 6 months. Statlander is just presumably here to lose en route to a feud with the turning Layla Hirsch. But in the fairly likely event she puts her over to, what a slide it is for someone so vastly improved. Herein lies a problem within a problem. One of the strengths of AEW's thoughtful and textured approach through much of 2020 and 2021 was in creating combinations that sprawled into others you were excited to fantasy book. This feud, and let's be honest, others on this list, find all roads leading to ends that aren't exactly dead, but let's be honest, really don't feel alive. Number 6, Andrade El Idolo versus Darby Allin and Sting. Andrade El Idolo was in piss-funny form for pretty much the first time ever when he made it clear that he'd like to buy Darby Allin, as if AEW was some Dickensian Winter's Tale. As usual with Allin and Sting, the prospect of either or both having clashes with El Idolo wasn't the problem. That arose on the follow-up Dynamite when the former NXT champion hit up Matt Hardy, of all people, to possibly acquire the use of him and or Private Party, or the whole HFO for what it's worth, for what we can assume is the softening up of Hack Skellington and his far cooler Dar. This is old news as a plot device. Andrade paid off FTR in a similar story with little excitement to it, and it's all disconcertingly fluffy for stuff that surely serves as delay material for an Andrade Allin Ripper, maybe even at Revolution. That is a great, unique pairing taking full advantage of the toys Tony Khan has to play with. Half of the journey to get there, though, could easily be skipped, especially if it's this one. Number 5, Tully Blanchard versus Arn Anderson. Come on, lads, fight or okay? The two elder statesmen of the AEW managers roster have a luxurious history upon which to draw from, but Arn Anderson has threatened more people with a fake gun than he has Tully Blanchard with his fists. That means they're still mates, right? Wrong. Blanchard and FTR got lippy with Anderson, his son Brock, and Lee Johnson recently in order to set up a tag match, with some brainbusters peacocking used liberally as the main storyline driver. Arn chased Tully down the All Out 2019 ramp in a scene never followed up on, and the pair have flashed the four fingers with eyebrow flickers than once as well. Where intrigue once lay, now sits the feeling that AEW themselves just can't quite decide what this long-standing kinship should really be. Number 4, Cody Rhodes is weird. Cody Rhodes generates discussion regardless of what he does, and Cody Rhodes doesn't believe in heels or baby faces anymore, and these things can both be true, but Cody Rhodes isn't AEW's biggest hero anymore. And a failure to lean all the way into that has thus far done more damage to the company's mid-card than the American Nightmare likely imagined was possible. He's beginning to prove yet again that you can be all things in wrestling, but you categorically can't be them all at once. The TNT Championship win was a big moment in the recent fog of action. A title vindicates a megalomania he's trying to keep a lid on and will surely work wonders for whomever he hands it over to. But these are very pro wrestling parameters, and Cody's done away with loads during the last year or so. He is at least still the AEW's avatar at a time when the promotion has never felt more unfocused. The American Nightmare 2 is still all over the sodding shop. Number 3, the Interim TNT Championship. By the time you're watching this, AEW might well have actually abandoned this or booked the match to eradicate it, which sort of begs the question why it was brought about in the first place. Cody Rhodes being forced into isolation ahead of a Battle of the Bells contest with Sammy Guevara took a title match away from a show that had to have one. But AEW had other belts to use and different champions to turn to without bringing the very notion of interim titles into the conversation. All Elite Wrestling is a company that has thus far proudly relied on standards, precedence, and consistency. With that in mind, should Hangman Page now have to miss around 10 days, will an interim champion be crowned in his short absence? Likewise, Britt Baker or Jade Cargill or whomever's got Taz's FTW strap? I mean, yeah, to the latter actually, that's a perfect free hit for Hook. But that these questions can even be asked reflects the possible problems this particular choice might later cough back up. Number 2, Men of the Year. Men of the Year are smug pricks, and Dan Lambert is a grizzled and stubborn arsehole. But what else do we really know about these as an act beyond that? Yes, we know that Ethan Page has got the tightest tits in the game, and Scorpio Sky has a record that kind of brings the credibility of AEW singles rankings into question. But even those tidbits are courtesy of Twitter rather than some explosive Dynamite moment that can make you cheerlead for them as vociferously as Dan Lambert. And what of Dan Lambert's future with them? The American top team man seemed to get into Lance Archer's head at a key moment for the Murder Hawk Monster and could well link up with him for an expected AEW World Heavyweight title match against Hangman Page. This instantly felt more vital than his recent bollocks with Cody and Brandy Rhodes, suggesting that the group as a whole might have now outlived their usefulness. There's zero shame in this, but that could change the longer they toil away as the sharpest losers on the show. Number 1, Chris Jericho versus Eddie Kingston. It is impossible to connect with the fiction of pro wrestling when you are too concerned with the facts. It's this mindset that's made connecting connecting with almost anything WWE produces increasingly difficult for large sections of the audience over the last few years. A company with such a long rap sheet is now judged more by those endless errors and the decision-making process behind them than the actual creative output. AEW's excellent universe building in its earliest days attempted to establish a cast of characters you cared for deeply either way. A sporting framework disrupted by the drama of pro wrestling, crafted for the taste of fans by one himself. When Chris Jericho entered into a program with Eddie Kingston out of absolutely nowhere in late 2021, not a single person thought about the narrative justification. Kingston had gotten over huge thanks to a gripping, brilliant Players Tribune piece on his life, coinciding with an incredible feud and match with CM Punk, with conversations about his title aspirations pivoting to winning AEW's top prize. It's this people thought about when a, let's be honest, lukewarm Jericho was looking for something to latch onto. That feeling has never subsided. The match could and very well may rule, but there's a depressing Machiavellian air about the labored story getting us there. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Let us know in the comments section below, like you needed any encouragement. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to What Culture Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily wrestling podcasts. You can also let me know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureWW, where you can find me at Adam Wilborn. Thanks for watching. I've been Adam from What Culture, and I'll see you soon.